Hi, my name's Simon Watson and I teach Clawhammer Banjo in London in the United Kingdom. That tune was called Kitchen Girl. That's a tune in A modal, which is a typical West Virginian tune that came to us from Henry Reed. What I want to do in this video is to just give you some idea about how we can make that tune more interesting if you're trying to learn it, and I want to give you some teaching points which you can kind of use in any situation for any tune. Let me just quickly pick the strings so you can join in if you want to at home. So that's a high A, E, A, D, and then a high E. So it's pretty much the same as your standard A tuning, except you raise the second string from C sharp up to D. Okay, so what I always recommend people do first of all is to listen to the tune before you even start trying to play it. That's extremely important. There's some fantastic performances of this on YouTube. Someone like Michael Neverisky plays it extremely well, and some fabulous recordings. And I'd really recommend doing that before doing anything else. What you can do from there is to get a sense of the rhythmic patterns in the tune. So kind of pat it out or dum-de-dum it in your head, but just break it down into rhythms. And that's really the most important thing of all, because the rhythm is the most important part of this type of old-time music. And then you can kind of lay the melody on top of that. So let's assume you've done that, and we'll just break into the tune and just see what we can pull out of it. Okay, so that's kind of the basic bit to begin with. And what I recommend you do is to get in your head a kind of little fret map of where your fingers are going. Now, because this is modal and you're really working with about 5 notes, it's very easy. That's why I like this tune as a teaching tune, because it's very easy to pick up. So basically your fingers, as usual, are working from the 5th fret. And then on the other side you've got a little triangle here where a lot of the B part is taking place. So just think about your fretboard in the most basic way, just like an airfield with markings all over it, little triangles and squares. That just get it down to the absolute basics, and don't make a big deal about the left hand, because what's really important is the right hand, because that's the kind of the rhythmic engine. Now, one thing you can do, and I never see this in books or in any teaching videos, and it's a really simple thing, and you certainly would have this in playing another fretted instrument like a guitar, is the business of actually dampening the strings to shorten the notes. That can be really useful. So instead of having a note running like this, with all the sustain that goes with it, you can shorten it by going. And to do that, what you do is you just keep the finger resting on the string. So instead of going and taking it off, it's like that, and that shortens it. So let me show you how that works with something like Kitchen Girl. Some of the notes are just being shortened, so some have got plenty of sustain and you've got some length to them, and others are very short and snappy. It's probably something that you're doing already without realising it, and that was certainly the case with me. It's just something you intuitively pick up, but I think if you're conscious of it and you can then be a bit more deliberate about it, it is a very useful tool for expressing yourself when you're playing. Right, something else you can do is use the Galax lick. and if you're not familiar with this, it's just very simply a roll. It's not a brush really, it's a roll, because you can hear the notes separated out from one another, with a fifth string on the end of it as though it's part of the roll. So without any fretting it would sound like this. Again, there's some excellent teaching videos on YouTube of how to do this. There's a lot of different ways of doing the Galax lick. There's a very typical round peak way where you might play just the top two strings. In this case I'm using a more general kind of approach to the Galax lick, and I'll show you how I can just feed that in to the tune. It's very good for opening phrases, very good for opening either the A part or the B part in lots of tunes. So that's a very good thing to just get in there for a bit of variety. Okay, still staying with the A part, double thumbing is a very nice technique if it's used sparingly. Otherwise it's a bit heavy on the ear, but it's basically doing this. So let me show you how I could fit that into Kitchen Girl. I'll just do that again. As I said, that's one you want to use quite sparingly, because that sound can be quite irritating, but and I wouldn't open with that. That would just be throwing too much at people. But when you're coming round on the repeat, that kind of re-energizes the tune. So that's a good thing to slip in if you can. And you very often use that when you're descending on the first string. That's kind of how it tends to come into my playing. Okay. Okay, now we're getting to the real kind of the heart of it all, which is developing those rhythmic patterns. If you've been carrying this tune around with you for, I don't know, a few days, let's say, just going back and forth from work and wandering around or at home when you're doing something, humming that tune to yourself, what you will actually be doing is developing your own kind of way, your own particular way of playing the tune, and that's something I'm really passionate about. I really hate the idea that someone kicks off with a few sheets of tab and just ends up producing probably a rather poor copy of someone else's way of playing it. This way I think you're going to get your own way of playing it, but there are a few useful little tools for doing that, and it's really an example of a rhythmic pattern would be the basic bum-diddy beat, yeah, this one, like that. But along with that you'll typically get an extra beat. So instead of saying blackberry, blackberry, it becomes blackerberry, blackerberry. It's really how you mix those patterns together that makes this stuff exciting to listen to, and gets a kind of danceability about it. And then it starts getting more interesting and complicated as you go on. But just say mixing those two patterns is a good place to start. Let's move on to the second part of the tune to demonstrate this. So instead of just having a very basic, I'm putting in, I'm just pulling off on every single note there, and then I can mix in some hammer-ons. sort of like splitting it up into smaller fractions. So you're taking a crotchet and then splitting it up into quavers, semi-quavers. And then the next stage from that really is to start pulling a few notes out so it doesn't get overly complicated, and thinning it out a bit. If you just throw everything at the listener, it gets very tiring to listen to. So let me try and show you the same passage played in different ways. So I play it sort of as complicated as I possibly can. That's quite nice, but if I just kept on doing that, the listener would lose interest, because it's just loads and loads of notes. So if I was to thin that out, what would I do? At its most basic level, it would be something like this. Make it even simpler than that, but that's about, you know, keeping the melody to a level that's recognisable. That's the simplest way you could play it. And if I was playing with a fiddle player who's really playing loads and loads of ornamentation, I might do that just by way of contrast. But also playing this solo, if I was playing something very, very complicated, on a second time round I might want to just pick out something very, very basic like that. Let me try and illustrate it by contrast. Okay, and then this would be the other end. Now, to be able to do that, I've got to have a very good knowledge of the tune. So I'll just know instinctively what the basic notes are, the ones that really matter. Another technique for thinning it out is more of a syncopation device, which is a skip beat. Let me just try and illustrate this. When you do it deliberately, it becomes oddly difficult, and it's quite likely that you're already doing this. So instead of playing the basic Nashville shuffle like that, you go and you deliberately skip a beat, and that actually gives a lot of drive and syncopation to the music. So that's a thinning out which really actually adds something by taking something away, and which I find very, very exciting. Anyway, I hope that run through of Kitchen Girl was useful to you, and as I said, I give lessons, and based in London, so give me a call if you want lessons. If you want to contact me about this particular tune, I'm very happy to give you some free advice as best I can, just by email, something like that. That would be great to hear from you. Thanks for watching.